before reality TV crews ever set foot in the mountains of British Columbia, before Rust Valley restorers became a global hit, Mike Hall and Avery Schae were already legends in their own corner of the world. Their bond wasn't made for TV. It was forged over decades under hoods, under pressure, and in the cold, rust-slicked garages of Canada's forgotten car country. Childhood friends turned business partners, Mike and Avery had something most reality shows could never fake: authenticity. Mike, the eccentric dreamer with a mop of wild hair and a heart that beat for vintage metal, had a singular obsession: rescuing old cars from the jaws of decay. Avery, the grounded, no-nonsense mechanic who could turn Mike's wild ideas into reality. Together they were the heart of Rust Valley, and when the Netflix spotlight hit them, it didn't feel like acting. It felt like someone had finally turned a camera on a friendship that had always been real. Their banter was legendary. Mike's impulsiveness often clashed with Avery's eye-roll-inducing realism, but that friction was exactly what made them electric on screen. Fans didn't just love their builds, they loved them. They weren't polished TV personalities. They were two guys who genuinely loved cars, shared a million laughs, and occasionally butt heads in the most Canadian way possible. But beneath the laughter and camaraderie, something deeper held it all together: loyalty. Avery was the one who stuck by Mike when everyone else thought he was nuts for buying more cars than he could possibly restore. And Mike, in turn, never questioned Avery's judgment, at least not publicly. They trusted each other in a way that only decades of oil-stained friendship could build. They weren't just restoring rusted-out relics. They were keeping each other grounded, until one day the cracks began to show. Russ Brothers Restorations wasn't born out of a spreadsheet or a business plan. It was born out of Mike Hall's obsession. Obsession with saving old cars, no matter the cost. But what made the garage work wasn't just Mike's passion. It was Avery's ability to ground it. Where Mike saw dreams, Avery saw deadlines. Where Mike saw a '68 Firebird worth saving, Avery saw the man-hours and thousands of dollars it would drain. That tension worked for a while. First, the duo balanced each other out. Mike pushed boundaries and Avery reeled them in, but as the builds got bigger and the bills got steeper, the dynamic began to shift. Mike started buying more cars than they could restore in a year. Avery, already stretched thin, began questioning the strategy. "We're building a mountain of rust," he reportedly said to a close friend off camera. Still, Avery stayed. Not for the money, but for the friendship and the belief that what they were doing mattered. But the deeper they got into the show, the more it became clear Mike wasn't slowing down. He was speeding up. And Avery was the one slamming the brakes. The garage that once felt like a sanctuary was turning into a pressure cooker. No one talks about how reality shows change reality. When Rust Valley Restorers went global, it put a spotlight on Mike and Avery like never before. Overnight, they went from small-town gearheads to international TV personalities. The shop wasn't just about restoring cars anymore. It was about producing drama, hitting deadlines, and feeding a content machine. Suddenly, every decision had to be camera-worthy. Every build had to be wrapped up by the final episode. There was no room for delays, no tolerance for failure. For Mike, the fame was validation. For Avery, it was suffocating. Behind the scenes, producers began nudging storylines. "Can you two argue about this build? Can We redo that scene but with more tension. And while the show never faked anything outright, the subtle pressures to perform started wearing Avery down. He didn't sign up to be a reality star. He signed up to build cars with his friend. But now every weld came with a camera over his shoulder. Every laugh had to be timed for the edit, and every mistake risked becoming a meme. And slowly, the thing they built together began to feel like it belonged to someone else. The biggest stressor wasn't fame. It was finance. Mike Hall, for all his passion, was bleeding money. He mortgaged properties, dipped into retirement savings, and kept expanding the operation, even when it didn't make business sense. Avery, ever the realist, saw the cliff coming long before they reached the edge. They clashed privately at first. Avery questioned why they were restoring a hopeless shell of a charger instead of a profitable, easy flip. Mike brushed him off. The heart wants what it wants, and Mike's heart was stubborn. But as the build stacked up and profits vanished, the tension became impossible to hide. Even on camera, fans started to notice Avery's frustration. His jokes got sharper, his tone wearier, and the trust, it was being tested more and more. While Mike dreamed big, Avery was left cleaning up the mess, chasing missing parts, and fielding calls from frustrated suppliers. At some point it stopped being about friendship and started feeling like survival. There was no dramatic blow-up, no on-camera fist fight, no viral meltdown. What happened between Mike Hall and Avery Schae wasn't loud. It was quiet. Too quiet. One episode Avery was there cracking jokes, pulling engines, and calling out Mike's crazy decisions. The next he was gone. No explanation, no farewell, and the silence was deafening. Longtime fans took notice fast. Reddit threads lit up. Facebook comments flooded in. "Where's Avery?" became the most asked question on Rust Valley pages. Rumors swirled. Some thought he was sick. Others claimed he'd been fired. And a few even feared the worst, that the brotherhood had broken. But the show offered no answers, no send-off montage, no goodbye episode, just a void. And it wasn't just the screen that felt empty. Mike's energy changed. His laugh didn't carry the same weight. The chemistry, the magic that made Rust Valley Restorers so watchable, had lost its spark. Behind the scenes, insiders say the two weren't speaking regularly. Missed calls turned into short texts. Shop visits became infrequent. Whatever was happening, neither man was willing to say it out loud. And sometimes the deepest cuts aren't made with words, they're made with silence. By the time season 4 rolled around, the divide between Mike and Avery wasn't just speculation. It was real. People close to the show began whispering about what really went wrong. One crew member allegedly said it wasn't one thing, it was everything. Long hours, missed deadlines, financial stress, but most of all, a friendship that had been strained past the breaking point. Avery, once the soul of the shop, had started to withdraw, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. He didn't want to fight with his best friend on camera. He didn't want to fake enthusiasm for builds he didn't believe in. He wanted out, not from cars, but from the circus the show had become. Mike, on the other hand, was still clinging to the dream. For him, Rust Valley wasn't just a business. It was a legacy. The idea of slowing down, of changing direction, was something he couldn't process. "This is what I do," he'd say. "This is who I am." The show, once a celebration of passion and perseverance, had turned into a pressure cooker. And it didn't help that money was bleeding from every corner. Avery reportedly grew tired of watching good cars get buried under bad choices of watching Mike stretch himself and the team too thin. In the end, the show didn't just test their friendship, it cracked it open and exposed everything they never wanted the world to see. The fan base wasn't just loyal, they were emotionally invested. They watched for the builds, sure, but more than anything, they tuned in for Mike and Avery, two misfits in a rusty paradise, trying to do the impossible. So when Avery vanished without warning, the audience wasn't just confused, they were heartbroken, and they demanded answers. YouTube comments, Facebook threads, and Rust Valley fan groups erupted with questions. Did Avery quit? Did they fight? Why is no one saying anything? With no official statement from the show, speculation filled the void. Some blamed production politics. Others pointed fingers at Mike. A few believed Avery simply couldn't take the chaos anymore. Even as rumors mounted, Avery stayed silent. No angry tweets, no interviews, just the occasional cryptic post or photo from his own garage, far from the bright lights of reality TV. Mike, for his part, dodged direct questions, offering vague responses, like, Avery doing his thing, or we'll see what happens. But fans knew better. They saw the emotional distance, the tension, the pain behind Mike's smile, and they kept hoping for a reunion, a resolution, a sign that Rust Valley could be whole again. It took months, maybe longer, but eventually, Avery Schae broke his silence. Not with a dramatic tell-all or a bitter interview, just a few carefully chosen words dropped during a local podcast appearance, and a couple of quiet moments on social media. I needed a break. That's what he said. Simple, honest, and loaded with meaning. In that one sentence, fans heard everything. The burnout, the disillusionment, the weight of carrying a dream that no longer felt like his. He didn't name names. He didn't blame Mike. But the subtext was clear. Something inside the Rust Valley garage had shifted, and not in a way that could be easily fixed with a new carburetor or coat of paint. Another time he was asked point-blank, would you ever go back to the show full-time? Avery just smiled and said, I'm doing what makes me happy now. And that's what hurt the most for fans, because Avery wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to stir the pot or throw shade. He was just done. Tired of the grind. Tired of the pressure. Tired of watching something he once loved become something else entirely. He didn't storm out. He faded. Oh. And that soft exit said more than a screaming match ever could. If Avery's silence spoke volumes, Mike Hall's few public reflections struck an even deeper chord. In a late season